Hi everyone, my name is Brandy. I am the owner and artisan behind Brush by Brandy. You guys are here on my YouTube channel for another weekly tutorial. And this week we're actually going to be working on this tea cart behind me. It's not done yet, but it will be by the end of this video. So this is actually my first tea cart that I've ever done. And it may be my last tea cart that I ever do too. I didn't realize what a challenge these pieces are, but literally this came into a million tiny pieces. The drop leaves, the tray, there's a drawer, the wheels came off, there's a handle. I had to take this all apart and coat it, and it took a few coats to get through. So this has been a challenging piece, but I'm excited with how it's turning out. So the colors on this are inspired by the Sunflowers transfer from Dixie Belle Paint. And this gave us our mustard color, that's our inspiration. I love this color combination. And so I'm going to show you how to get this color. And then we're going to go ahead and use this sunflower transfer and create a sunflower inspired tea cart this week. So I hope you guys enjoy. If you do, click that subscribe button. We do something a little different every week. But let's go ahead and get started on this one. Here's where we started out on this tea cart. This is a customer's piece that she brought to me, and she was inspired by a jewelry box I recently did in a mustard blend with the sunflowers transfer. So that's what we're going to use for the finishes on this piece. All right, I'm going to start by assessing this little tea cart for what I need to do to get it ready for paint. And this one is actually a pretty cool process to show you guys because I feel like it actually needs a little less preparation. So I'm looking at this wood, and this is a blonde color wood. It looks like it's a maple. I don't think this is a wood that is highly likely to bleed. It also has a nice clear coat that's really intact on it. So I'm not worried about this wood seeping through my paint. So I feel like there I can skip priming with Boss. I feel like this is solid wood, so I don't need to use slick stick, which is usually for non-wood products like glass, laminate, plastic, things like that. But I do want to go ahead and scuff up the clear coat that's on this. So I'm going to take my Surf Prep Rad Pad, and I'm going to go ahead and use the gray one because it's got a little bit more bite to it. This is the heaviest grit one that comes in the multi-pack. And I'm just going to scuff over the surface of this. And all I'm looking to do is, you can kind of see it turns it white, is I want to take down a little bit of the sheen in the clear coat on this piece. So I've already gone over this in its entirety. And the next thing that I want to do is I want to take a damp rag and I want to make sure that I tack off all that dust so that I've got a nice clean surface. Now the difference that scuffing made in my surface is it took down any of that sheen. So I can feel it now. It feels like it's got a little bit of grit to it, and that gives my paint something to bite onto. So for this piece, I plan to do a blended finish, but I'm going to do that in my second coat. I think it's going to be hard if I try to blend over this wood and get coverage at the same time. I'm going to end up battling it. So I'm going to go ahead and take, this is just a flocked roller. And I'm just going to go ahead and roll on a coat of color. And this is going to make it much easier to come back in my second coat and give this a blended finish in my second coat. So I'm going to go ahead and roll on this tea cart, and when you come back, we'll have a coat of our base coat on here. Okay, a couple things I want to talk about on this tea cart. It actually has quite a bit of hardware on it, and that's because it has these drop leaf sides right here. So it's got a hinge on either side and then a hinge in the middle. I am going to take this all apart here, and I'm going to clean all this hardware. I'm going to go ahead and leave it on so that I can get my blended coat. And then once I have this off, I'm just going to paint the underside a solid color, a solid layer of my base coat. That's not going to be blended. So for now, I'm going to leave this on, but I do intend to take this tea cart completely apart, including the wheels, and get all this taken off so I can clean the hardware, and then I'll coat the underside of that once I'm doing that. But I'm going to leave it attached so that I can get a nice blended coat across the top of the table. All right, let's talk about something really fun on this piece, and that is painting spindles. So obviously for painting the spindles, I'm not going to use my roller. I'm going to come back and I'm going to use my Dixie Belle Mini. And let me show you how I paint spindles. I'm just going to load up my brush fairly lightly. I don't need too much paint. This is just my base coat. But when I paint spindles, I actually am going to paint them working around using horizontal brush strokes. If I paint it like this, I'm going to catch every single lump and bump that's in this spindle. So I'm just going to go ahead and work my way around, and what I'm paying attention to here is I want to make sure that my brush strokes are nice and smooth, that I don't have any areas that are building up thicker in paint, And that's why I want to make sure my brush isn't too heavy on the paint to do this. It's going to take me multiple coats to get coverage. I'm going to take 2 coats on this piece anyways. So for right now, I just am trying to build it up and get something to cover them, and I'm going to use those horizontal brush strokes. I'm doing a basic 2-color blend on this piece, but I'm actually using 3 paint colors. So my Colonel Mustard paint, I took and I tinted it with a little bit of Dixie Belle paint in collard greens. This just tones down the Colonel Mustard a little bit so it's a more muted shade. And then I'm using Dixie Belle drop cloth for the highlight in my blend. I am not going to lie, blending the top of this table was a challenge. It's a huge open space. It's really wide. It was hard to reach all the portions, and it was hard to get to all of it quickly enough before my paint started drying. So here are my tips for blending on a large surface like this. Use a lot of water. On my base coat, you'll notice I'm shading with a little bit of Dixie Belle paint in chocolate. I ended up deciding not to do this. I didn't care for the look as much. I decided I'm going to go ahead and do that shading with waxes instead. I actually have out 4 brushes for my coat that I'm doing right now. So my 4 brushes are 2 of my Dixie Belle minis, and I'm going to use this just for laying my 2 paint colors on. I also have out my Dixie Belle Best Dang brush. I'm going to use that to help with my blending, and then I have out an oval medium, and I'm going to use that to feather out the brush strokes that are created from the Best Dang brush. I first start really just by laying my paint colors onto the surface. You can't blend unless you've got the paint colors on there. So I start out by laying my paint colors on, and then I'm going to start working them into each other. I tried to work just one area of the table at a time, but I did need to get a little bit of a blend in between the leaves and the main portion. So it forced me to kind of work multiple areas at one time. All right, so let's go ahead and blend this coat out. Again, lots of water. You're going to see I've got that spray bottle in my hand the entire time I'm working on this. And I'm just keeping it wet so that I can keep this paint moving the entire time. I had to work very quickly. It was pretty exhausting to put a coat on the top of this table, but it did take about 15 minutes to work it out once I had it going, and I did break a sweat while I was doing it. I did decide after 1 coat of blending on this that I did want a second coat on this top of a blended finish. And so we're going to do this all again. So basically I want to get rid of the brown edges that I created. Like I said, I'm going to do that in waxes. So same process. I'm just going to come back and repeat the steps and get another blended coat on this top. That's just going to make my colors a little more saturated. I really wanted that highlight to be a little bit cleaner. So I just came back and did it again. I am so much happier with how this looks after my second blended coat. This is the look that I was after. So if all else fails, just come back and repeat your process again. It's just paint, right? You guys should know by now, I always like to shade my pieces with a little bit of waxes. So I'm using Dixie Belle Grunge Gray Wax here, and I'm just using a natural bristle artist brush, and I'm following along all of the turns in my spindles. Once I outline all those turns, I'm just going to come back with a slightly wider brush, and I'm going to smear out that little bit of line that I created with the wax. Once they have this nice smudgy effect, I'm just going to take a rag and come back and buff a little bit of that wax away. I'm applying this wax over unsealed paint, and I find that I've been doing that more and more lately. I just like the look that the wax gives on unsealed paint, but if you're a little bit nervous about applying wax detailing, then you can go ahead and seal your paint first, and that gives you a little bit more control in wiping it back. All right, you guys, now it's time to add the sunflowers. These flowers are so cheery, and I love that my customer said that these make her feel happy. And that's how I think your furniture should make you feel. This is art in your home. And so I love that she found something that really meant something personal to her. I cut my sunflower up into little bits. I cut each individual flower out, and I just am roughly placing them around my cart where I think they make the most sense. I actually really like on this transfer that each of the flowers is a little bit different. They're a little bit different style, a little bit different color, but they all coordinate together. So it gave it this kind of organic feel, putting all the different styles of flowers together. I laid my flowers out around the bottom of my cart, the tray, and then the tabletop. I did end up using 2 transfers on this piece with quite a bit of the second one left over. With all the details on this cart, there was no way I was going to clear coat it by hand. This one got sprayed. So I took it back apart again, gave it a clear coat, and this one is finished. I'm thrilled with how this piece turned out. It was a bear. I don't think I'll ever do a tea cart again, but I love that my customer is happy with it. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you'll click that subscribe button. You can find a link for all the products I used in this video in the description for this post. As always, you can find more Brush by Brandy on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and YouTube, and on my website at brushbybrandy.com.